Yeah, it's 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, okay, you're doing better than me. I've just flicked on to 11 a
Oh,
day with the kids, and I think they finished me off. They finished the last bit I had. I wanted to speak to you for a long time because of your books, but because of another connection as well, which is the music slash cryptozoology connection.
sure.
There's a huge connection between musicians, I find, and cryptozoology, and you are a
Yep.
musician, right? So, and I'm a musician, singer for like 34 years, so a long time.
Very cool.
And yeah. So I just want to find out about that. What's your beginnings? Where are you with music now? And what's this intersect? How does it intersect with what you do in the cryptozoological world?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, my dad was a big music guy. He never played any instruments or anything. It's just every time he was home, he was always playing music. So I kind of grew up on Motown, which was actually phenomenal. I didn't appreciate it at the time like I do
Mm.
now. But Motown was just phenomenal music. Which about a month ago, I was actually in the Detroit airport, and that was my first time out in that area. So I was really kind of excited to be able to be in that city.
Okay, the
The
home of Motown.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as I was going through the airport, like they had like the Supremes playing, and it was just an awesome experience. But so I grew up, definitely, loving music, and but the big thing for me was, I as far back as I can even remember, I was a big Monster fan. I think most little boys, liked, the Incredible Hulk and, different superheroes, but like I liked the Incredible Hulk, and then I liked King Kong, I liked Godzilla, I liked whatever was big and could destroy. And I just kind of, it went from there. And as I got older, and I kind of, got into, more underground music that wasn't, mainstream. It wasn't played on like your local like pop radio
Mhm.
stations. That's when I found, bands like, the Misfits and the Circle Jerks, and a lot of underground hardcore. And I don't know, for me, it's just kind of monsters and music just kind of play a role together. And I think part of the excitement about monsters and music is when you look back to any of the movies that one would watch when they were younger, or even now, it wasn't just the excitement of the monster, it was also the music that went with it, that
Mm.
took whatever was going on at that moment to that next level.
Mm.
um so for me, it was just those two just combined together was something that I just held with myself for years, and just continued to just love it. And then at some point, I think I was maybe a freshman in high school, I had asked for a guitar for Christmas, and I ended up getting one. And from there, I just kind of, hung out with some friends that who knew how to play, and they kind of taught me, little tricks, little things here and there. And I just kind of, I wouldn't say I put monsters on the back burner, but for a few years, it was more of kind of like a girls and music type of focus for me all through high school. And then my senior year,
That
I
makes
ended up taking.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing was, is like nobody talked about monsters anymore. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't the cool thing. So I didn't know. So I just kind of, followed, what my teenage confused body was telling me to follow, and just kind of went down that path. But then my senior year, I had to take a class, because I was missing a couple credits. So I took a class called Gothic Tales, which I'd never even noticed existed. All through the 4 years, I could have taken it any time, and somehow, I never noticed. I just signed up for the basics of what I needed to take. But I also did, took some writing classes. But Gothic Tales, I was like, wow, it sounds really awesome. And I jumped on the Gothic Tales boat, and the whole semester, all we did was we watched like Stephen King movies and different monster scenes, and we just talked about them after. It was literally like the
Wow,
easy credit, but yet it was the coolest credit that I had ever gotten.
that sounds
Uh,
like an awesome credit.
yeah, in the teacher, I don't know if he was supposed to be doing more, but it was his last year teaching. Ironically, he was my mom's English teacher. I mean, he'd been teaching for so long, so it was his last year. So I'm assuming that he probably did more with the class in past years, but this was literally his last semester, and he was literally retiring after that. Um, but he ended up playing when we were doing a series on just different monsters and creatures. He ended up just playing us the Patterson Gimlin footage, which I jumped on that, and I was like, wow, this is great. And then I
Mm.
just kind of went from there. I just kind of went back to telling people, hey, you know what, I love monsters, I love creatures, I love legends. And I never really put the legend factor into the monsters and sightings. Whenever I thought of legend, I thought of like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, things like that, which I really enjoyed. But taking that class also made me realize that I love the history of these legends, where a lot of people will take the Patterson Gimlin footage and kind of advance forward with it, meaning
Mm.
what happened since then. Where I took it and I went backwards. I'm like, wait a minute, where did the legend of Sasquatch come from? Where did the legend of the Lake Champlain monster come from? Where did all these legends come from? So I started at that point in time, just again going backwards, and just looking into a lot of different Native American lore, and because I wanted to find out where a lot of these legends came from. And again, if you move forward with it, you just see a lot of technology, you get a lot of people's opinions, you get a lot of
Yeah,
different, but and that's great and all, but I really, the Native Americans are the reason we know what we know, in my opinion. And like for instance, me, I've got books to sell. I'm not going to lead anybody in the wrong direction to sell a book, but I've got books to sell. Native Americans didn't have anything
yeah.
to gain by talking about these legends and these different sightings and beliefs. So I put a lot of respect and a lot of trust into their accounts and what they say. So moving forward, I started playing out in bands, and I played in some bands that did real well. Some, we put albums out, we were in newspapers, we're played on the radio. But as anybody who's plays music and was hoping to make a career out of it knows,
Sure.
the music business can be a real vampire,
Oh
and
yeah.
kind of suck the life out of you. Plus, myself and the singer kind of did things a little bit backwards. Like we graduated, we got jobs, we got married, bought homes, and then said, "Hey, let's go out and let's go out and start a band and see what we could do." So instead of like leaving our parents' basements, we would leave work to go to shows because we had to pay our mortgages. So
I
uh,
mean, this is really quite a sensible way to go about it, and so many musicians miss out on that fact that you're not going to get paid a lot of money, and you kind of need a job.
yeah, you
Need a
you
job.
absolutely. And the thing is I mean, like if we hadn't gotten married and bought the homes, I mean, we literally could have just lived, in the van and just toured around and
Yeah.
ate off of the $20 that we made, that we were promised 300 from the promoter, but he disappeared on us when we are supposed to get paid, all the usual fun
Yeah.
aspects of being in a band. But
Oh, I miss it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's the big promotion, and you get there, and turns
Yeah.
out it wasn't really promoted that well at all, so you're playing for
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
ashtrays at
Yeah.
the tables. um so and then so after a while I kind of stepped down from playing out in bands, and no, stop it. I stepped down, and I was doing just more writing, not music or anything. Just again, just writing little stories here and there, and just playing music for myself, and in like a little room that I've got with all my amplifiers and drums. And um, it, as I kind of progress, I was just like, you know what, I kind of want to, I'd like to write like a young reader's chapter book and put that out there and
Uh-huh.
see what happens. Because some of my
I've seen
best,
these. They look really cool. They look really,
yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
I mean, some of my best years that I can remember was being in third grade. Being at that age where the world was a mystery, even though it's a mystery right now. But I mean, third grade, it was a major mystery for
Yeah.
me, and um, with the world possibilities were endless. I didn't realize how much the world actually sucked to it in third grade. So it was just a lot of good times. So I've
Yeah.
written a few young readers chapter books, and but I started writing those, and then as far as the cryptozoology portion of it, for years, I mean, I was part of the groups. I watched, all the shows.
Hmm.
Huge Monster Quest fan, love Monster Quest.
Same. Yeah.
Um, Doug, just phenomenal show. And
Yeah.
what I didn't want to do was I didn't really want to. I was thinking back to like the whole music scene, and monsters were very um, special to me. So I didn't want any type of spotlight on me when it came to it. I just wanted to be able to enjoy the subject, be part of the subject, because it doesn't matter what the subject is, whether it's paranormal, cryptozoology, whether it's music, whatever. I mean, there's so much bad behavior that comes with it from other people, a lot of
Oh
jealousy,
yeah.
and I
Oh
just
yeah.
didn't want
Yeah.
any of that in the world of monsters for me, because it was my first love. And
Mm.
but I ended up releasing another book called Stanley Riker and the Bigfoot Runaround. I
Ah,
wrote it, got it signed in 2019 to a independent publisher, and obviously at that point in time, I kind of had to, what I call, come out of the cryptid closet,
yeah.
because I now had an obligation to the publisher, and I wanted people to read it and just have fun with it. Um, so part of my background is also sales and marketing, so I had to put together a marketing plan to market it and market myself, because again, I didn't want to let the publisher down, and
But that's a
obviously,
handy skill to have, in this world.
yeah, it it,
Yeah.
it it is, and I tell people, like, if you want something, don't just go out and get it. Ask people who can help you
Mm.
get there.
I say the
Just,
same thing.
yeah, make
And
sure
you'd be
you take care.
surprised how many times just asking will get you what you want.
Get
The
what you
reason you didn't
want.
get it before is you just didn't ask them. And you say, hey, I'd like that. Can you help me? And they go, yeah, sure. Sure, I
Yeah,
can. Just like
exactly.
that.
It's like with like, I've trained and led sales teams, and I always tell them, I don't care how the appointment's going with a potential
Yeah.
customer. Before you leave, you ask for the sale.
Yeah.
You ask. I don't care if you think it blew up in your face. You ask for the sale.
Mm-hmm.
And and the thing is, and I'm the type of person where, if somebody um, you know, it comes to me and asks me, I help them out in whatever way that I possibly can as well. And it's, with me, it's definitely not, a one-way street. I'll help out whoever. I want to see people succeed, and I want to see people do well.
Mm.
But so like I was saying, I put together kind of like a marketing plan for 2020. By February, I was booked at, like, I don't know, 8 to 12 events. I was booked on Coast to Coast AM, and a bunch of other podcasts. But obviously, COVID came in and blew up all the events for 2020.
Yeah. That was a
Um,
bad year.
yeah, and then so that was kind of what brought me to where I'm at today, after a couple of years, because I've had a lot of people say to me, hey, you know, um, where did you come from? You kind of came out of nowhere, and then you're just there, like, on the scene, and a lot of people are like, you're just one of those TV show wannabe guys that you saw a TV show and you're like, hey, this is cool, I want to be a part of this, when in actuality I've always been a part of it. I just didn't want to be a part of it where I was going to be in a situation where people were
I find that
saying that exact
yeah.
thing to me.
Yeah, no, I find it very strange in the sense of, where did you come from? Everybody starts, or that has an inception date at some point, whether it's because you went public at that point, or because you started 10 years ago, or you just said, I'm going to start now. I love this subject. I'm about to start doing this. There's no special permission that's needed, not in
Right.
this world. They used to say, watching that music, hey, you just popped up out of nowhere, Kenny. What are you doing gigging around the place here, thinking you're a musician? Well, I learned my instrument. I wrote some songs. I'm out on the scene playing music, if it's okay by you. And it's a strange thing. And I think sometimes there's a lot of protectionism. A new guy comes, he writes some good books, and I haven't, they're on my list. I haven't got them yet, but I love the look of the books and the American Cryptids and everything like that, and the international books. And they look fresh, they look new, they get attention, they get #1 bestseller 3 times in a row, and people say, who the hell's this guy? He just rocked up a few years ago. Why should he be getting this attention?
Yeah.
But the point is, it's a free for all. He's getting the attention because he's doing the work, and that's what I like. What I'm seeing at the moment, actually, is there's a scene growing with lots of new people coming in and melding quite well with the other people who've been here for a long time as well. But it's stopping it becoming stale. And as always, as you know, in marketing, the best way to sell bread is to be on the street with 3 other bakers, right?
100%.
Not there by yourself. So for me, every time I see that there's a Kenny or there's a Carrick or there's a Alexander Pedikov
Yes.
coming up, I'm like, great, this is fantastic. Okay, so we've got some more people selling bread on the street. We're going to get some attention. This is good for me.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
In as a musician, you know this as well as I do. People will see bands that will come up and have like this #1 hit, and they're like, wow, how did that happen for them? This and that. See, they don't know the fact that band had been together for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
played those clubs that were empty, got kicked around. They don't see that. They just see they see the success at the other end. And there really is, there's a lot of work that goes into anything to do if we really want to see good fruit come out of it. And again, it's the same thing with writers. I mean, I don't know anybody who just one day just wrote, and then their first book they actually somebody published. Usually there's a lot of when people ask me about publishing and different things like that, I say, well, first you have to be okay with rejection. You've got to first be okay with somebody telling in order to be able to continue. Because if you get a couple no's here and there, no's you a no should really more, in a sense, if you want to succeed, push you to a level where you want to push harder. If the no makes you want to quit, which it will, and you do, that's as far as you'll go with it. But I mean, rejection is part of anything that, for anybody who's done anything great or wants to do something great, everybody's gotten no's before. And it's just a matter of just staying in the game, and keep going. And I've seen some people get so many no's that they become so bitter, and they're upset, and then they see somebody else succeed, and I try telling them, look, that person's success isn't your failure. That person failed many times, and not in an attempt as in they did anything wrong, but they got to know this happened. And it's like it with anything in life. And as far as this subject, again, no matter what the subject is, if you're an engineer, I mean the things that we see that are out on the road right now that have been a great success at one time failed.
Absolutely.
And people, when it failed, said, hey, you know what, let's look at this again, look at it from another angle and see what we can do.
Oh,
So
some of those guys have had to unmake the entire bridge. They've had to deconstruct this thing and start again. What you were saying, by the way, about the nose, I think is very important. Like when I see somebody come out of nowhere and get the thing I want, the first thing it tells me is it can be done.
yes,
It can be done. They've just shown it can be done. You know, when you see like a Seth Breedlove set up his own film company, Small Town Monsters, and raise his own capital and make his own movies, make it successfully, you think, that's awesome. It can be done. Thank you, Seth, for showing us. And not, it should never be, oh, that guy, this guy doesn't deserve that. I want this. I've worked hard. It's always an encouragement. And I think, again, seeing that sales and marketing side in you too, it's just very important because if you can flip it like that, if you can flip it, I think it's really a fantastic thing, and it will help you. It will help
agreed.
you.
Agreed.
So, Kenny, what about the cryptids in the book? Let's look at the first book as well. What kind of stuff are we looking at here? Is it like a rundown of all the American cryptids from Sasquatch to the Chupacabra, or are we is it solely focused on a set line of American monsters?
Well, American cryptids, for the most part, just pretty much. I guess I'll explain kind of the formula of the book. I wrote this book, I'd say probably 10 times before I came up with something that I felt worked. Where a lot of the books that I'd read that were already written by a lot of the greats, like the Ken Gerhards, the Lauren Colemans, the Lyle Blackburns, they talked about different creatures. And, like, originally the book was chapter 1 the Wendigo, chapter 2 Sasquatch, chapter 3 this, and I was just like, okay, it's been done. I want to do something different, and I want to do something that I guess, I don't know, I wanted to make it somewhat personal, and I wanted to kind of feel like I'm there with the individual. Um, so the book covers all 50 states, and each chapter opens up with a segment regarding the history, some historical events from that state when they achieved their statehood, and something that they might be popular for, like Vermont is popular for Ben and Jerry's and Green Mountain Coffee. So I'd mentioned that in Vermont.
Okay.
And then from there, like I'd mentioned earlier, I have a great respect for the Native American tribes people for me knowing what I know based off of their descriptions and their history. So I highlight a Native American tribe from that state. And then the next section goes to whatever the popular monster is from that state. So like when I covered West Virginia, obviously it was the Mothman. I covered the Mothman.
Oh, great.
And then I close each chapter out with a Sasquatch sighting from that state. And what I didn't want to do when I wrote this book was I didn't want to just go on like a website, a BFRO or whatever, and pull something off and throw something in there. So what I did was I used Google Maps, and I'd go to the state and I'd find an area that was covered with like forest land, and then I would look for the closest small town to that area.
Wow.
I would research that small area, that small town, and find out what the name of the mom and pop convenience store, the hardware store, the barber shop, the diner. And then I'd call them and I'd say, hey, I'm writing a book, and I heard there's been some potential Sasquatch sightings in your area. What can you tell me? And
Wow.
that's how I was able to get connected with people from all those areas, because I couldn't obviously go and interview somebody from all 50 states.
That's smart.
So, and that's how I
Yeah.
came up with one. And I'd get about 4 or 5 of them for each state. But the
Wow.
majority of the ones that I went with um, were the ones where the individual who I spoke to wasn't a believer. Still to this day, maybe doesn't necessarily believe, but saw something that they can't understand, and that kind of changed the way that they think. So the majority of the Sasquatch sightings at the end of each chapter which is just somebody who, again, wasn't a believer, wasn't a researcher, didn't, maybe even laughed at the subject,
Mm.
but saw something that resembled what we would call a Sasquatch, and it kind of changed the way that they saw things. So, of course, when I did New York, I I talked about the Whitehall, New York sighting. So some popular ones I closed out the chapter with. I'd say about 90% of them, again, were ones that were just, some of these people didn't even want to talk to me at first. And some people,
Antagonistic witnesses are my favorite witnesses. The
yeah.
person who doesn't want to see what they have seen
Mhm.
is the best kind of witness to have.
Yeah.
Kicking and screaming and hoping it's not true. It's such a validation.
It is. And I had people, that they gave me so much description as if they had sat down, you know, and had lunch with what it was that they saw.
Wow.
And then again, then I had people that, were just like, I know what I saw, but I don't know what it was. This has just kind of changed the way that I think.
Mm.
Also, at first, talking to them, it was like a normal conversation. But then when we started talking about what they saw, their voice would crack. They would become kind of distant. And I knew
Okay.
right then and there that there was something there, that they did see something,
Mm.
that they can't explain.
Good
So those,
trauma response. Yeah.
yeah, those tend to have a lot of emotion behind them,
Mm.
and really kind of, I'm kind of moved by those. So those are the, like I said, about 90% of the sightings were based off of, somebody, again, who wasn't looking. But so that's American Cryptids. Again, it covers all 50 states, and I also wrote it as if I was a tour guide, and I'm taking you on a tour through each state, because again, I wanted to do something different, and I didn't want to just write a book, put my name on it, and throw it out there.
Mm.
I'm not saying that other people are doing that. I'm just saying, for me personally, I wanted to.
Sure.
I really struggled with it. I really stop. I really struggled with it, and I came up to it, and I was like, you know what? If this book doesn't sell because I write it like this, then you know what? Then that's fine. If people don't want to read it, but I want to do something a little bit different, and I really don't want to just go and just kind of throw information out there, from like a scientific point of view or whatever. I
Mm.
wanted it to be loose. I wanted it to be an easy read, and I wanted it first and foremost to be fun, and also,
Mm.
kind of be personal to people. So by covering each state, everybody who picks the book up, if they're from the states, the first thing they do is they go to the state and see what I wrote about
Mm.
the state that they live in or the one they grew up in. So they already feel that connection to it, which in
It's a
return,
grand idea.
so
Yeah,
in
it's a
return,
great
they feel
idea.
like, I'm sorry, what was that?
I said it's a great idea. It's a great idea to do it state by state because you can dip in and out. And to say that people will go and look for their state or the one they're interested in and get those cryptids in. But also, one of the ideas you told me about I really loved was that mom and pop store thing. The junction of the town is the mom and
Yeah,
pop store. And who would know better than them what's being
yeah.
talked about in the town? And as soon as you said that, I was like, that's got to be it. That's it. I'm stealing it. I'm stealing that.
Take it, take it, take
you
it,
know,
take it, take it, and run with it.
oh,
Anybody,
honestly,
because
such
you're
a good
gonna
idea.
you're gonna get so. These people also put a trust in you too,
Yeah.
which is a big responsibility. So I had probably 60% of the people not wanting me to even mention their name.
Yeah.
So
Same. Yeah.
I made a decision to not mention anybody's name, because one, I didn't want to screw up and accidentally put the wrong name in when, somebody who was like, I just don't want
Yeah.
my name, make a mistake. So I just made a conscious decision to just say, you know what, I'm not putting anybody's name in it, just out of respect, um, and
They're more likely to share it with you if they don't have to experience the blowback from that as well. I was saying to somebody recently in regards to do people make sightings up? And yes, they do sometimes, but generally they don't because when you tell everybody that you've seen Sasquatch, that doesn't increase your chances of getting that promotion in the small town you work in. That doesn't increase your standing with the people in your church or your club or whatever you're doing. It makes you the weird guy or
Does.
girl. And unfortunately, because a lot of these people have that trauma-like response where they can't deny what they've seen, they can't unsee it or even deny that it's happened, even when it damages them. It's sometimes a very hard thing for people to go through. And I generally, similarly to you, unless it's a classic sighting that's a public and everybody knows about it, don't use the name. Don't even ask them if I can use the name. And just don't include it. And people are more happy from that perspective to share that experience with you.
Yeah, agreed. And, and you're also, the thing too is, especially if you mention to them that you're writing a book, and they don't ask for a portion of it.
Yeah.
They that they're really genuine in what they're talking
Yeah,
about. And
absolutely.
the other thing I always tell people too, if somebody comes to you and asks you about your sighting and they promise you that they're not going to say this, they're not going to say that.
Yes.
In many cases, unfortunately, the conversation, the aftermath doesn't necessarily always go that way. So the fact that, people have spoken with me, even though that they know, like, if they talk to somebody who's writing a book, this and that, well, this might be what the conversation was, but this is what the writer wrote. Be two totally different things. And I made sure I assured, them that I wasn't going to add my opinions.
Oh yeah, no,
Wasn't going
absolutely.
to add anything into it. And the whole book,
Verbatim every time.
yeah. And if you go through American cryptids, I didn't add my opinion into anything, whether it be
Awesome.
Mothman, sheep squatch, bat squatch, the albino people. I didn't add my opinion into anything, because I really didn't want it to be an opinionated book. I literally wanted to be like a travel log where you're taking you on a tour, like when you go to, like, different cities, they have the tours that you can go on, and then the person's talking about the history and this and that.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
what I wanted the book to be. I wanted it to be me taking you on a tour across the country and just talking about monsters and talking about the history of the state, and again, the Native American lore. So that's what made up American Cryptids. And it's just, I was really, I'm really pleased with outcome of the publication and the outpour of support that the books received. It's just very, it's really humbling. And and of course, I may have wrote the book, but the book is nothing if nobody supports it. So, I'm constantly telling people thank you, because this book didn't do as well as it did because I wrote it. It's because you folks supported it. And you guys support the subject, and by supporting the subject, that's what's helped the book. And
You help to grow the subject every time somebody brings out something good, and you buy it and you support it and you share it. It grows the subject. And I think we're going through a stage right now in cryptozoology where it's like a growth spurt again. It's been revived somehow. There's an interest. People are looking at it again. Those old classic guys who were there before are still there. There's some new guys that are joining with them and spreading it out again. And that's good for the consumer. That's good for the fan of the genre to get into, to have a choice. And it also inspires people to write, because there's a possibility people will like what they've written and take it home and stick it on their shelf. And I just love that, for a long time. And it's the same with things like Loch Ness at the moment. There's some groups I'm in touch with now. They're going back up there and staking out the area again, almost like a cryptozoological co-op. They're getting together and there's no leader. They just kind of triangulate their coordinates, and they stake out certain parts of the loch and broadcast it often. And I said to them, it's almost like it's been revived suddenly, those days of the age of exploration. I would say it's not dead. We just lost interest. And there's more to find. So people are getting out there. And I love stuff like this. I think it's just it makes the cryptozoological world a more interesting place to be. So I just really love that. What I am interested in, actually, and you mentioned about the Native American background and folklore and history that you look into, that you don't start from the point of the modern sightings and work forward, you work back. And what's interesting to me about that is I've always been curious about these foundational moments in cryptozoology, the Patterson-Gimlin sighting, the Nape footprint, the 19th, the surgeon's photo, etc., for Loch Ness, and those disputable incidents can create a foundation for future cryptozoologists. It's almost like sacred writ sometimes. It's not questioned, but they might be theoretical in nature. When you go back, like you have, into the distant past, you get to the real core of the ethno-known aspect of this species or the folkloric aspect of the species, and pulling those real animal bits out of the folklore, or pulling the folklore out of the real sightings as well. How do you deal with all of that? How do you look at those ancient sightings and pull a real creature out of some stuff that's sometimes very, as I say, folkloric or supernatural in nature?
Yeah, that's the thing. For me, it could be kind of tough because while I'm reading some of it, like there might be a certain tribe that, like, for instance, when we talk about Sasquatch, you have certain tribes that talk about Sasquatch being of flesh and blood. Then you've got another tribe that talks about Sasquatch being of just spirit. And then you've got a certain tribe of people that will say, hey, no, they're both flesh and blood and of spirit.
Mm.
So how do you actually put it together and feel like you walked away with any type of answer? Um, I've gotten to a point where at first I was looking back to find the answers of what a certain creature was based on the lore. But then I quickly kind of switched my concept of research to where did it come from? Where's the earliest sighting or encounter, or what was the earliest writing of this certain creature? Because with this subject, people have many different names for it. I think the subject is strange and weird. So I find like there's the more you look for answers, the more questions you have. So as far as the Native American lore, I quickly changed it from trying to find out what it was to where this legend came from and what it meant to the Native American people. So it it never progressed into answering questions that I had. It just brought more questions into play, but it did solve certain things in a sense, as in, okay, well, this is where this came from. This started with this tribe, or this tribe thought this. Well, some tribes talk about how they lived in harmony with Sasquatch. Other tribes talk about how, at night the Sasquatch would come in and raid their village and steal their women and mate with them. So as far as these different tales and legends, I go back and I just, again, just kind of try to find out where they came from and find the earliest information, because again, when the subject that, and I hate saying it like this, but this is the reality of it right now, with a subject that has zero accountability and somebody can make it up as they go,
Mm.
uh, that you've got to be really careful what you're reading and what you're searching, because you can easily come across something that's written, um, that you can take to heart as fact, but in reality, we really, we know that the facts that I know are that people have, for thousands and thousands of years, have had experiences with all kinds
Mm.
of different creatures and things that still to this day we can't understand or explain. So all my research just comes back. I try to go to the earliest times that I can find out what was being said there, um, and why they believed that.
I think it's a great method, Kenny. And I think it's a great fail-safe because again, people can make things up. And the odd thing about uh, Bigfoot interest and also Nessie or lake monster lore in a sense as well is that cryptozoology exists as science in a way. We're looking for hidden animals or undiscovered animals, and those can be new types of frogs or salamanders and all kinds of things that they find every single year. Like there's a new whale they found just recently in the Gulf of California of all places, right?
Yes.
Never seen it before. There it is, new species of whale. Wow, amazing. I think we even discovered a new species of grass snake here in the UK 2 years ago, 2 years back. Oh, it's a subspecies, but it was there. They never knew it was there. So
Mhm.
there's scope, fine. And on the other side, there's the fan club of Bigfoot and Nessie and these types of things, which seems to be quite separate to the science.
Yeah.
It's a genre of its own, almost like a folkloric faith system in a way, in which people believe or don't believe or believe portals or flesh and blood and all these different aspects about it. And so I think it's good that you go back because within that there's the mercantile side of things where people are trying to make a living or doing conferences, all fair enough. There are certain pressures within it that can possibly corrupt the stories and the sightings and the things that people are putting into their material. So yeah, great. I think that's fantastic. Go back because that can't be changed.
Right.
It is what it is. It existed from that time immemorial. One other thing you said as well, which is interesting, is the kidnapping of women. And I know people bring this up. I've recently done a book about hairy humanoids around the world, and almost in every single thing, whether it's the Almasti or it's the Yowie or it's the Yeren or the Woodwoes, the wild man of Europe, anywhere you go, this kidnapping of humans for
Yeah.
mating is present. It's one of the main things that's present in all of the stories, and that's strange in their histories as well, not
Mhm.
just in the modern sightings. I think that's an odd fact to share if these are all just made up bogeymen from every culture around the world.
Agreed. I mean, there's so many different things that could be talked about, but that being a consistent, again, not with all of them, but enough of them where you're
Mm,
like, whoa, hold on a second, wait a
yeah,
minute. It really kind of sticks out, and it really makes you question, like, wow, I guess they're, just like, with humans, I guess that, there's a jerk in every crowd.
yeah. I think yeah, there's that guy that just can't take no for an answer
Yeah.
in every single crowd. Yeah, exactly. And there's a Sasquatch like that there as well, most likely throughout the history at various points. Um, just before we wrap up, I just want to tell everybody where they can find your books, where they can get hold of you for conferences and bits and pieces, and if they've got a sighting, how do they get in touch?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first I will start with the books. Obviously, I'd say the quickest and easiest way to get any of my books would just be to jump right on Amazon. Just search Kenney W Irish, and all four of my books will pop up. American Cryptids in Pursuit of the Elusive Creatures, International Cryptids and Legends, which just released last month, and Stanley Riker and the Bigfoot Runaround, as well as Alexander and the Moonlight Caper. So I'd say that's the easiest way. Some of the books you can, like American Cryptids, you can go to like Target.com, Walmart, different things like that. But I'm on Amazon more than I'm on anything else, and the majority of the people I know are. So you just search my name on there, and again, all four of the publications will pop up, and you can grab it off of there. As far as events, there's a couple that are coming up for the rest of this year. A lot of the big events already came and passed this year. I was in Tennessee a few times. I was in Michigan. There was the Michigan Bigfoot Conference. There was the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival in Tennessee. There was the Dogman Cryptid Conference. There was the Rochester Winter Parafest. Those have already all come and gone this year. But the two that I have left is I'm going to be September 17th. I'm going to be at the U Albany in Albany, New York, at the college at a book festival there. I was asked to be a part of that, so I'll be there. And in October, I'm just going to be a vendor at this location, at this event. It's called Sleepy Hollow Paracon. It's the
Oh,
first
wow.
one ever. It's actually going to be in Tarrytown, New York. Um, uh, the famous, sighting area of, where the legend of Sleepy Hollow and the Headless Horseman legend comes from. And I am looking at an event possibly in December. It's kind of up in the air, so I'm not 100% sure right now. But as of right
Okay.
now, I'm booking events into 2023, which
And your website, it's kwirish.com, is that right?
yes, yep, kwirish.com. I just switched website platforms, so if you go to the website, it's very basic right now. It pretty much just has my picture and my bio on there, as well as a link to one of the publishers. I've got to get that all updated, because the web platform I was using before started giving me some issues. But
Okay.
I can be contacted through Facebook on Messenger. You can just look me up, Kenney W Irish, the Cryptopunkologist. You can find me on Instagram as Kenney Irish Author. And if you follow me on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter, I post the events that I'm going to be at, any new releases coming up. Anybody who reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I've got a book releasing. Can you help me promote my book?" You'll see me promoting other people's books as well. Um,
Awesome.
so whatever method somebody chooses to go to reach out to me, I definitely will get back to you. Um I guess that's it.
Well, Kenny, thank you very, very much for joining us on the Beastly Theories podcast today, and for letting me pick your brain. I've learned a lot. I've got some little ideas in there. I don't know what the English equivalent of the mom and pop store is. I guess that would be the corner store in the local village.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, absolutely. I'm going to try it out and see if it works. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you for reaching out to me. It was a pleasure coming on with you.
Awesome. Bye bye.